New video out shows that Twitter does indeed censor one side of the political aisle and not the other. So this video came out from Project Veritas, and in it, a senior Twitter engineer says that they are all scared crapless about Elon Musk taking over Twitter. So here is the man in question, right? You can tell that he is talking in a bar, and he's kind of, I'm just going to tell you what I think. He's kind of talking out of his backside, and he says that, well, Twitter does not actually believe in free speech. It's Elon Musk that does. And he goes on to explain his rationale. He does not seem like he's kidding. He does not seem like, well, I'll let you judge for yourself. He also doesn't really seem like he is apologizing for these things. He thinks that Twitter employees are so right, which makes them so virtuous, which means what they do is absolutely appropriate. So let's roll the video and then you tell us if you agree with my assessment.
Difference between Twitter's definition of free speech and Elon's definition of free speech?
Twitter does not believe in free speech. Elon believes in free speech.
What do your colleagues say about it?
They hate it. Some of my colleagues are like super left. Our jobs are at stake. He's a capitalist. If we weren't really operating like capitalist mode, we were very socialist. Like we're all like communist. I basically went to work like 4 hours a week last quarter. That's just how it works in our company. But Twitter is like mental health is everything. Like if you're not feeling it, you can take a few days off. People have taken months off. And I don't know if the two parties can truly coexist on one platform.
So that's kind of the gist of it. And look, he's a senior software engineer from at Twitter, being asked by Project Veritas, an undercover reporter, asking those questions about what is it really like there. And I think this just confirms what we already knew about Twitter, right? We already knew there's all the videos, of course, of people who that were freaking out that Elon Musk was potentially going to be buying Twitter. There was all the sort of the freak out, the departure. People are like, I'm leaving, I'm quitting. Oh my God, my company, it's not the same anymore. I'm going to get out of here because I can't have a guy who is, anti-censorship basically taking over.
Yes.
I don't know. I mean, who cares? You feel like, he's at a bar, he's having a few beers or whatever he's drinking, if he's drinking at all.
Well, he's not speaking as an official Twitter position.
No, of course not.
He's telling his experience of it, but he is speaking for all Twitter employees. He says, literally, we are all commie as F, which says to me he has a fundamental misunderstanding of communism, but okay. He's a bro, right? He's speaking like a bro. He's virtue signaling. He is tribal signaling. It is all like he just said all the words about how we love mental health. We work low hours. We take care of ourselves, right? He's just like,
but I think these are the things you don't say.
Things.
But I don't think these are the things you say publicly. Like you don't talk. Like, people in Silicon Valley, you do the exact opposite or you lose your job. Like if you tell that, what you say is, no, we don't want this guy who, like, he's going to allow Donald Trump back on our platform. Like, that's not a guy we want running Twitter. He's just for any kind of speech goes. What about just what happened in Buffalo? Like, we can't allow that kind of stuff on our platform. We can't support speech we don't agree with. Like, that's the normal line that you get from Silicon Valley, right? And so here comes a guy who actually says, I think he's being honest here. He's like, all these guys, there's no free speech at Twitter. They literally want what speech is sanctioned by Twitter to be on that platform. And then he's also telling the truth about what's going on there. No one's really working at Twitter. It's been long thought of as a really poorly run organization. I mean, for many, many years, people have interacted with Twitter, thought it's been poorly run, totally disorganized. Just actually kind of a crap show.
Which brings us around to this Twitter war that's happening on Twitter and off between Elon Musk and the founder, because he is now saying he's concerned about how much of Twitter consists of fake users. He has said until he gets a straight answer about that his $44 billion deal cannot move forward. He got some answers from Twitter CEO Parag Agrawal, to which he replied a poop emoji and said he's not convinced with this answer. He doesn't like it, which, I want to give him the benefit of the doubt, but shouldn't you have asked that question in your due diligence?
So this is part of the due diligence. What they were told, and see, part of this is in the SEC filing. The reason this is so fascinating, there's a couple of pieces I find fascinating here. Twitter files SEC filings, which lays out and tells how many fake spam accounts they have, right? They've said in their SEC filings that it's about 5% or less than 5% fake accounts on Twitter. Now, what we now learn from this due diligence process as this closing is happening, right, is that that's not accurate at all. And so what, in many ways, Elon is sort of shining a light here saying, you guys lied in your SEC filings, basically.
Which is the only way he could walk away from this, because he has to prove breach of contract. Or he could get a lower price, which is what a longtime friend of his and one of who's put up $100 million as part of this deal says about this, that this is a negotiating tactic, that he could literally close the deal at a much lower price. That's who Tim Draper, who's an early investor in Tesla and SpaceX, he put $100 million into this Twitter deal. So he's not speaking out of turn. He's basically saying, I think it's going to change. I think it's going to close. I think what he's going to do is get a better deal because he found out 2/3 of users are bots or something. So he floats this. So this is interesting. It's a negotiating tactic. I mean, it's like saying, okay, you're telling us this is the case about your Twitter users. Here's our contract for me to buy it based on what you're telling me is true. If any of that is not true, then we can either renegotiate or walk away. And now, there is a $1 billion breakup fee. So if he decides not to buy Twitter and cannot prove breach of contract, that's in the contract. Is a $1 billion breakup fee, and they can also sue him for breach of contract.
I think clearly
there's
going to be, but what the CEO of Twitter is saying, he's like, hey, you can, because Elon said, hey, what if we took 100,000 users and we see how many of that 100,000 users are real or fake? We'll do our own assessment of it, a random sampling. And the CEO is saying, you can't do that. You need our proprietary software in order to figure out who is a spam bot and who is not. So you're almost, you need to rely on you to tell us who is fake and who is real. But this, I think, is really going to blow the lid off the dump, because if we find out 2/3 of Twitter users are actually fake or spam bots, I mean, what does that do to Twitter's share price, which is already plummeting today? What does that do to the company and the people who lied to the Securities and Exchange Commission about this? I mean, this is absolute securities fraud. If they're telling people that they actually have 95% of their users are real and 75% of them are fake, that's freaking huge.
You think it's that high?
Well, all I'm saying is what Tim Draper says here. What he says is, I think so. Is this going to close? Tim Draper says, but I think he's going to get a better deal because he found out that 2/3 of users are bots or something.
That's an astonishing proportion.
Yeah, and he sunk $100 million into this purchase of Twitter. So it's not like he, and he was a big backer of Tesla and SpaceX, and a friend of Elon. So this is not just a random reporter saying this. This is an investor in this deal saying that. So
this Twitter bro who's on this undercover video, do you think he gets to take all this mental health time now that he's been blessed enough on the internet?
Well, he already admitted, he's like, look, I haven't been to work in 4 months, or I've only been there 4 days.
Yeah, he doesn't need to go, so no one's going to bust his butt.
I mean, during the campaign, during the pandemic, famously, Jack Dorsey was like, if you want to come to the office, you can. You're no longer required to come to the Twitter offices anymore. You can, you don't have to come to downtown San Francisco anymore. We're done. You can just work from wherever you want and do whatever you want. And that's why Twitter, in many ways, is largely a shit show. Their app is terrible. It has so many features that don't are really wonky and don't work. For a long time, you got the fail whale. Do you remember that?
That actually might be the reason that those employees are so worried, because my stepdad worked for Tesla, and it is not like that. You have to go to work. There are very strict rules, right? The ships run on time. So probably Twitter users are more worried about or Twitter employees are actually worried about having to work than free speech.
Yeah, exactly.
It's their free time, not their free speech.
And Elon's famous for like literally sleeping at the Tesla factory and working with his employees. Like he doesn't get any sleep and he's there working with them like long hours. So yeah, that could maybe that's the heart of it.